Hi there, I'm Mike. What I have for you today is Star Wars The Black Series Second Sister Inquisitor. Just like some of the other figures from Force Friday, I have this figure in two different flavors, vanilla and chocolate. I will be getting into both of these figures, but in the meantime, take a look at a picture of her while I read the bio on the back of the box. A vengeful warrior of the Empire, tasked with tracking down Jedi survivors. The Second Sister Inquisitor is driven by her all-encompassing hatred of the Order. The Second Sister Inquisitor is an antagonist in the game Jedi Fallen Order. I previously reviewed Cal Kestis, the video game's main character, and since then, I've actually started playing the game. I got a PS4, I got the game, and I'm about maybe a couple hours in. It's actually a really good game. I'm not gonna get any spoilers for the character, who she is, or any of that stuff. I'm not even saying those are spoilers, I'm saying that I don't wanna get into that, and if people in the comments could also refrain from that. I'm just gonna be talking about this figure as a figure for the most part, but I do talk about kind of where she's from, and that's Jedi Fallen Order. She's a bad guy. But you might be asking, Mike, what's an Inquisitor? An Inquisitor, as far as I know, was sort of invented for Star Wars Rebels. It might be before them, but I had never heard of it until Star Wars Rebels. Star Wars Rebels had a couple different Inquisitors as well. They're essentially former Jedi or bad guy Force users who work for the Empire to hunt down Jedi. That's about the extent to which I'm going to get into the story on this. That's who she is, that's what she does, that's her purpose. But let's talk about the figure itself. Let's get going, starting off with the looks. The looks of this figure. Does she look good, and does she look like she does in the game? And the answer is, yeah. Absolutely. We essentially have two different looks available with this figure because the accessories that she comes with, one with cape, one without cape, and there were two different versions of this figure. One that had a carbonized look or a graphite look, and one that is kind of a normal one. Now the graphite one is a GameStop exclusive. The normal one was part of the Force Friday wave. Unlike the Mandalorian, there really isn't a drastic difference between these two figures. This one is just sort of a little bit grayer than this one. It's really hard for me to put into terms because they're still both relatively the same color, whereas the Mandalorian had completely different colors in some parts. Whereas this is largely the same, it's just kind of shiny, which I guess is kind of the whole point of this whole carbonized look thing. Looks wise, does she look like she did in the game? And like I said before, the answer is yes, she does. She's got her mask, she's got her outfit, the same like her Imperial outfit. You can have her with or without cape. There's just a lot going on here. So if you're looking for a figure that looks like it does on screen, this is a pretty good one. I will say that sometimes on screen, she does remove her helmet. That's not really a spoiler. I'm not saying what she is or who she is underneath, and what she looks like doesn't really mean anything. It's not like she's someone we know. I would have liked it had they given us the option to remove the helmet or an alternate head so that we could have an unmasked version like we get in the game. But that's really more of an accessory thing, not really a looks thing, but it's kind of a looks thing. I'm not gonna really dock it for that. She looks like she looks in the game. So I'm gonna give it the full point. Next, let's talk about accessories. What does she come with? What should she have come with? Those are some big things here. So in the package, we get this cloak. She actually comes packaged wearing the cloak. The cloak is nice. It is hard sculpted plastic, which I'm not a huge fan of, but in this case, I think it works just fine. I don't think there's anything to be gained from having a soft goods cape or cloak. It's more of a cape, I guess. It does have a really good texture on it, and that's one of the reasons why it would not have worked as soft goods, because you wouldn't have had the texture on there. The texture on this cape isn't just a plastic cape. It's actually got a lot of little bumps and ridges in it that I like. It does have the Imperial symbol sort of painted on the shoulder, either shoulder, and that looks cool as well. It is obviously removable, and when you remove it, she actually has some peg holes that it fits in quite nicely. So it's not just like she's got the cape around her neck, but the cape is being secured in place by those peg holes. Alternatively, you can remove the cape and replace it with just these shoulder pads. Now these shoulder pads are also on this cape. So it's sort of like the cape retracts up into the shoulder pads. I actually haven't seen that in the game yet. If that happens, don't tell me, don't spoil it. But that's just kind of what it looks like, because these shoulder pads are present on the cape, just sans cape. Now the shoulder pads they're an option. Let's just say that. I have one of each on because I have two of the figures on my shelf because there are two different looks. I wanted the option of displaying them both ways, but I'm definitely a fan of the cape more so than just the shoulder pads. The shoulder pads are annoying. They are plain, they fall off all the time. They use the same pegs that the cape does, but because they're so small and they kind of precariously kind of sit on her shoulders. So I'm not a huge fan of them. It's cool, I guess. The downside is you can't just take them off because your choices of options with the accessories here are cape, 80 shoulder pads, or gaping holy shoulders. You've been down too long in the midnight sea. Oh, what's becoming of me? That's awful. Why am I doing this to myself? I'm not even drunk. So that's the boring stuff. Those are her clothes. She also does come with this kind of standard Inquisitor lightsaber. Now, we've seen this lightsaber before in Rebels, so she kind of does the same thing. It's this, it's a circle, it's a disc, and it has 2 blades that come out of each end. This folds up in half, so we get sort of a half circle. It also, if she holds it out like this, it'll spin on its own, kind of like a General Grievous style of lightsaber fighting where you let the lightsaber do it for you. It's got some decent molding in there. There's some paint along the outside, the silver paint, and on the edges. The lightsaber blades are removable. There's no place though to store the lightsaber, which sucks. So if you just want to hang it on her belt, she can't. That's not an option. She's either holding it or it's laying on the ground awkwardly. But she does look cool holding it. It fits well in her hand. She's got a lot of cool poses you can do with it. It's a cool looking lightsaber. And let's completely forget about the fact that in Rebels, they use these to fly. That's a thing. My only complaint about these, and this is actually a complaint with some lightsabers in general, but this one especially, is that if she does fall over, and she's not the most stable individual, is that the lightsaber tends to take the brunt of the fall, and these are a little on the fragile side. So just be careful. I've just heated it up when that happens and just kind of straighten it back out. That tends to fix it, but I am a little worried that one day she's going to fall and her lightsaber is not going to make it. You can even see this one still a little on the bent side. I've lost a couple of lightsaber blades because of that. Just so you're aware, there's a difference between the regular one and the carbonite one. The carbonite one is more of again, it's kind of a graphite look. It's a duller look, I guess. It's a little bit less lustrous, I suppose, on mine. Unless I got them switched somewhere, but I don't think I did. But let's talk about what she doesn't come with. Number one, I mentioned earlier, she should have come with either a removable faceplate or an alternate head with no helmet on so she could, have both. I'm actually more of a fan of alternate heads rather than removable helmets because I find that helmets tend to scrape paint when they go on and off. Whereas removable heads, I find to be a little bit easier. Number two, I have the staples that I always say. Blast effects are things that should come with figures now, especially if they're a figure with a lightsaber blade. They should have some kind of blaster bolt to deflect that. Number two, alternate hand. Especially Jedi and Sith, they should always have some sort of alternate open hand for force posing. So she comes with some stuff, but I do wish that she came with just a little bit more. But because of the lack of stuff and the fragility, I'm gonna give it a 0.75. It's good. What she comes with is good. I'm glad they gave us some options. Could have just had a cape and let done with it, and no one would know the difference. But they didn't. They gave you some options, and that's nice. Next, let's get into articulation. How does she move? Can she pose well? Let's take a look at that. Her head moves all the way around. It moves forward that far, back that far. It has a bit of a waggle. Her arm moves out all the way around. Those fall off all the time. She has a single jointed elbow that bends more than 90 degrees. There's a swivel at the elbow, swivel at the wrist, and the wrist hinges side to side. This one hinges this way. She has decent movement in her torso. It moves forward this far, back that far. Her leg moves forward this far, back not a lot because it's definitely hindered by the skirt here. She has upper thigh rotation, a double jointed knee, a hinge at the ankle, as well as a rocker. With this being a second sister's widest stance with her feet flat on the ground. So she's like the bare minimum of good in terms of posing. Her head moves, yeah. Her arms move, yeah. But there's nothing really extra there. The shoulders don't have the butterfly joint. Her elbows have a decent range of movement, but her head and her torso are a little on the limited side. And because of the molded skirt, her legs are also a little limited in terms of posing. You can still get some pretty decent poses out of her. She looks cool just kind of standing up straight. You can get her into some dynamic poses with the leg and arm articulation she has. Thankfully, her elbow does bend at a greater than 90 degree angle. But again, I would have liked her shoulders to be able to come in a little bit more for some better like two-handed poses if you want to do that. Because of that, I'm going to give her a 0.75. It's not great, but it's pretty good. Next, let's talk paint, sculpt, and detail. Now, because I have two different figures here, I'm gonna be comparing them directly to each other. Let's start with the head and work our way down. The head has a really cool design to it. The Sith Inquisitor helmet is really cool. It's a little Vader-esque, which I like. Now, the difference between these two, again, is pretty standard. This is just a dark black, whereas this is more of like a gunmetal kind of gray, a graphite finish. Other than that, they're identical. Moving down to the chest, she does have the little silver, I don't know, like pips? I don't know what those are. Do they denote rank? Do they help keep her uniform clothes? I've got no idea. But they're molded and painted really, really well. It's the same on both. She does have some trimming and seams molded into the suit. There are some wrinkles molded in there, but overall, it's just kind of a flat color on both figures. Moving down to the belt again is the same, but the non-carbonized one I feel like is a little bit better. The divot molded into the belt buckle stands out more, where it blends in a little bit with itself on the carbonized figure. So in this case, I actually like the non-carbonized version better. The skirt underneath is a hard molded plastic. I'm not a fan of it. I would have liked it to be more of like a soft goods comma, like the clone troopers have. I think it would have helped with articulation a lot, but it does have some molded detail, and that's great. There's just no paint whatsoever on it anywhere. Her gloves are there. She has them. There's like a molded control panel on her right glove. There's a little bit of paint on there, but again, not really much to speak of. Moving down to her pants, they're kind of plain Jane. They're just Imperial pants. They just like she got them from Old Navy, Old Imperial Navy, I guess would be the name of that store. They're just pants. That's all they are. Moving down to her boots, much like their gloves, they're painted in a slightly different color. They're a little bit shinier. They have some molded details in them, but it's just kind of wrinkles and seams. There's just not a lot of detail going on. When you look down at it, she's actually very, very boring to look at. There's not a lot going on there. It's fine, it's what she looks like, but there's just not much there. This is kind of an easy figure, I think, to do. When it comes down to it, she's basically just wearing a power suit. She's got pretty beefy shoulder pads. She's got really cool pants, but also a skirt. Because she's her own woman, she can have it all. So in terms of her sculpt, paint, and detail, it's fine. There's not a lot there to write home about, but what is there is good. It's all painted sharply. I have to say, I do, again, just like the Mandalorian, prefer the non-carbonized look to the carbonized look. The carbonized look is fine, but I think I just like the more matte black look rather than the lighter gray, kind of silvery graphite look that this one has. It's a personal preference. Everyone's gonna have a different one, but I'm glad I have both in my collection. I'm going to give them both the same score for this. I'm going to give them both a 0.75. They're good. They're just plain. All right, so moving on to want and availability. Did I want this, and how easy is it to find? The answer is, of course, I wanted it. I want every Star Wars figure to some degree, but in this case, while I never played Jedi Fallen Order, I do like the whole concept of the Sith Inquisitors, especially from Rebels. I love Rebels. I love it to death. While I didn't really have any particular draw to the second sister as a character of who she is, I wanted a Sith Inquisitor on my shelf. So I was really glad to have her. I'm glad they announced her. But in terms of availability, that's where we kind of come down to it. Being Force Friday, these were available in mass retail, number 95 in the line. She actually came in two different boxes on launch day. I have here the first edition box. It's just kind of white instead of the normal black, and it has this cool, shiny first edition kind of thing right there. I actually initially bought the black box version because that's what I saw first, and then I found a white box version that day at a different store, and I returned the black box version back to the store I bought it from. Alternatively, you could have gotten this carbonized, or it says carbonized graphite, carbon optic graphito, and graphite. So I think it's just carbonized in different languages, because graphite's also an English word, and it is a kind of a graphite color. It's really hard to just say carbonized, because graphite's actually more accurate. But it's the same box. It's just kind of shinier and darker. It's got kind of a hollow look to it. You can see it catching the light right there. This one's a GameStop exclusive, as I mentioned earlier. And while I'm not a fan of GameStop exclusives, this one wasn't too hard for me to find. Thankfully, GameStop employees are usually pretty chill. That being said, I don't really like exclusives. It kind of sucks. And I think the whole carbonized thing is just a grab for making me buy an extra figure when it's literally just the same figure again, just shinier. So for the regular release figure, I'm gonna give her the full point here. I wanted her, and she wasn't that hard to find. Though you don't have to get a white box if you don't want it. The white box ones are infinitely harder to find, but there's no difference between the white box figure and the black box figure, just the box is different. So if you're an opener, it doesn't even matter even a little bit. The carbonized one, I'm gonna give less than a full point because number one, I'm actually decided I'm not a fan of the whole carbonized thing. It was a cool idea at the time, but if they do more of these, I mean, I'm probably gonna buy them because I'm neurotic and I have to buy all of them. It feels like a cheap money grab. Like, here's the same figure, just shinier. And of course I want to buy it, but I'm gonna hate myself for wanting it. And the fact that she's a GameStop exclusive typically makes her just a little bit harder to find. So I'm gonna give this one a half a point. So if you've been following along, the final scores on each of these for the official release, I'm gonna give it a 4.25 out of 5. In terms of the carbonized one, I'm gonna score that one just a little bit. She still looks fine. What I'm really docking her for over this one is just that want and availability. I've decided that carbonized figures really aren't my bag. I'm not a huge fan of them. And being a GameStop exclusive, it just kind of draws it down for me. I'm not a fan of GameStop exclusives, mostly because GameStop charges more for their figures and I just don't like it. So I'm gonna give it a 3.75. I definitely prefer the regular release over the carbonized one. So that's it for my review of the second sister Inquisitor. What did you think? Do you have this figure? Do you agree with my review? Are you gonna get this figure now that I did it? I love it when people tell me that they use my reviews to decide whether or not they're gonna purchase one of these. But I feel like by now you would either purchase this or you weren't going to, because it's a little late and I get that and I'm sorry. Note that after this figure, the next wave is on the cusp of the horizon. It's supposed to be out in March. So as soon as I get those in from Dorkside, I'm actually putting all other figures on the back burner and I'm gonna dive into the new ones that just came out and then jump back into the old ones. But rest assured, I'm gonna get reviews out in a more timely manner from now on. That's my commitment to you. And that's it. Thanks for watching. Thanks for getting this far. I do want to take a moment and thank these people here for subscribing to me on Patreon at a Black Series level or higher. It means a lot to me that you guys would do that. It goes a long way to help out the channel. If you want to see your name on this list, go ahead and check out the link down below. Also, while you're down there are a couple of different ways you can help the channel out, including liking, sharing, and subscribing, hitting the bell. All that stuff goes a long way and it's free to do. But with that, that's it. Thanks for watching and I'll see you later. Bye.